He was kicked out of his own company's office over a single red MAGA hat. The front desk manager humiliated him in front of colleagues and customers, confident she was taking a stand for what's right. Little did she know, the average customer she dismissed was actually the CEO of the entire corporation. What happened next would not only change her career, but shake the entire team to its core. It was one of those blistering summer afternoons, where even the air conditioning struggled to keep up. The kind of day that makes you question every life choice that led to you leaving the house. But for Jackson Brooks, billionaire CEO of Apex Deliveries, it was the perfect opportunity for his favorite pastime, going undercover. Jackson wasn't your typical corporate mogul. At 43, with a lean build and a confident stride, he had the casual charm of someone who could outwit you in a boardroom and then beat you at pool afterward. Today, his uniform was deliberately nondescript. Worn jeans, a plain shirt, and a MAGA hat perched confidently on his head. The hat wasn't just a choice. It was a litmus test. Jackson had learned early in life that nothing revealed true character faster than a symbol people loved, or loved to hate. The local Apex Deliveries branch buzzed with activity. Customers shuffled in and out, balancing packages, while employees darted around like caffeinated ants. At the front desk, however, one figure stood apart: Lisa. Lisa was a woman of contradictions, sharp cheekbones and sharper opinions, wrapped in a polished corporate demeanor. Her posture screamed authority, and her pinched expression warned everyone not to cross her. She was, by her own silent decree, queen of this kingdom of cardboard boxes and shipping labels. Jackson approached the counter, his box tucked under one arm, and offered a polite smile. "Hi there, I'd like to ship this package," he said, setting the box down gently. Lisa's gaze barely flicked to the box before zeroing in on his hat. Her nostrils flared, and her lips tightened into a line so thin it could slice paper. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice saccharine with a hint of venom, "but we have a strict policy against offensive imagery." Jackson blinked, his calm demeanor unshaken. "Oh, what's offensive about it?" Lisa gestured at the hat like it was emitting toxic fumes. "That," she hissed, "is against everything we stand for here at Apex. We promote inclusivity and unity, and that hat is divisive." Around them, customers paused mid-transaction. A teenager with earbuds yanked one out, pretending to examine his phone, while an elderly woman blatantly leaned in to listen. Someone at the back whispered, "This is gonna be good," as a few discreetly pulled out their phones. "I'm sorry," Jackson said, tilting his head in feigned confusion, "but I thought Apex Deliveries was in the business of shipping packages, not policing headwear." Lisa's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper, clearly for the audience's benefit. "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone promoting hate." "Hate?" Jackson echoed, raising an eyebrow. "It's a hat, not a manifesto." Lisa crossed her arms, her stance unyielding. "It's our policy. You're welcome to leave." The room seemed to hold its breath. Jackson's gaze swept the room, catching the amused expressions and eager phone cameras. With a slight smirk, he grabbed his package and tipped the brim of his hat. "Well," he said, his voice cool and measured, "I'll be back soon. Count on it." As he turned to leave, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Lisa stood tall, her expression triumphant, like she'd just single-handedly vanquished a dragon. But Jackson? Jackson walked out with a smile. Because what Lisa didn't know was that the dragon always comes back. The next morning, the Apex Deliveries office hummed with the usual chaotic energy. Printers spitting out shipping labels, phones ringing off the hook, and employees darting between counters like caffeinated pinballs. At the front desk, Lisa held court, reliving her self-proclaimed heroic stand from the day before. "And then I told him," she said to a co-worker, puffing up with pride, "Your hat isn't welcome here." Honestly, someone had to say it. Her colleague gave an awkward chuckle, clearly trying to avoid taking sides. Lisa didn't notice. She was too busy basking in the glow of her own audacity. The glass doors whooshed open, and in walked Jackson Brooks. But this time, he wasn't alone. His tailored navy suit fit him like a second skin, a sharp contrast to the casual clothes he wore the day before. Flanking him were his assistant, a regional manager, and two lawyers whose expressions could have cut glass. The entire entourage moved with the confidence of people who knew they owned the room, because one of them literally did. Lisa froze mid-sentence, her eyes locking onto Jackson like a deer caught in headlights. She quickly composed herself, plastering on her usual customer service smile as they approached the counter. "Good morning," she chirped, her tone dripping with forced sweetness. "How can I help you?" One of the lawyers stepped forward, his voice cool and authoritative. "We need access to the conference room." Lisa's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, but the conference room is reserved for internal use only. It's not available for outside guests." The regional manager, a stern woman with an aura of no-nonsense professionalism, took a step closer. "You're absolutely right. This meeting is for employees. That's why Mr. Jackson Brooks, your CEO, is here today to address the staff." Lisa's face drained of color so fast it was like someone hit a switch. Her eyes darted to Jackson, who stood silently, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the entire office seemed to pause, the air thick with tension. I didn't realize," Lisa stammered, her composure cracking. "I mean, no one told me." Jackson finally spoke, his voice calm but cutting. "Clearly. But you seem to enjoy being the center of attention, Lisa, so I thought I'd give you the spotlight." A ripple of whispers spread through the office as employees stopped what they were doing to watch the scene unfold. Phones were discreetly pulled out, screens glowing as curious bystanders began recording. Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but Jackson wasn't done. "Let's take this to the conference room, shall we? I think it's time for some transparency." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Without waiting for a response, Jackson turned on his heel and strode toward the conference room, his entourage in tow. Lisa hesitated for a beat before following, her confidence visibly crumbling with every step. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere was charged. The regional manager stood at the front, arranging papers with military precision. Jackson leaned casually against the edge of the long table, his sharp gaze sweeping over the employees who had filed in, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Lisa slid into a chair at the far end of the table, trying to make herself as inconspicuous as possible. It didn't work. Jackson's eyes landed on her, and she felt like a bug under a magnifying glass. "Let's get started," he said, his tone deceptively casual. "Yesterday, I had the pleasure of experiencing our customer service firsthand. It was illuminating." A nervous chuckle rippled through the room, but Jackson didn't smile. He let the silence stretch, the weight of his words sinking in. "Lisa," he said, turning his attention to her, "why don't you share with everyone what happened yesterday?" Lisa's head snapped up, her face a perfect mix of panic and mortification. Well, there was a misunderstanding," she stammered, her voice trembling. "I didn't realize who you were." "That's the problem," Jackson interrupted, his voice sharp. "You didn't know I was the CEO, and yet you thought it was appropriate to treat me, or anyone else for that matter, with disrespect." The room was so silent, you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Lisa's face flushed bright red as Jackson continued, his tone growing colder. "You assumed my hat defined me," he said, his eyes boring into hers. "You decided, based on your personal biases, that I didn't deserve basic respect. And in doing so, you didn't just disrespect me, you disrespected our entire company and what it stands for." Lisa opened her mouth to protest, but Jackson held up a hand, silencing her. "This isn't about your personal opinions. It's about professionalism. And yesterday, you failed. Spectacularly." The regional manager cleared her throat, stepping in with a clipboard in hand. "As a result of yesterday's incident, we'll be implementing mandatory customer service training for all staff, effective immediately." Lisa slumped in her chair, looking like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Jackson straightened, his gaze sweeping the room one last time. "Let this be a lesson," he said, his voice firm. "We don't judge our customers. We serve them. If anyone has a problem with that, you're free to leave." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving Lisa and the rest of the staff to sit in stunned silence. The conference room filled quickly, a mix of curious employees and nervous supervisors shuffling in. The air was thick with anticipation. At the far end of the table, Lisa sat, her back so straight it could have doubled as a ruler. She clasped her hands tightly in her lap, trying to project calm authority, but the occasional twitch of her foot betrayed her inner turmoil. Jackson Brooks, now firmly in CEO mode, stood at the head of the table. His presence commanded the room, not because he was loud, but because he didn't need to be. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, with his hair combed just so, he radiated the kind of confidence that made you want to sit up a little straighter. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice calm yet carrying just enough edge to keep everyone on alert. "I won't take up too much of your time, but there are some important matters we need to address." The employees exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued. Lisa, however, kept her eyes fixed on a point just beyond Jackson's shoulder, as if staring at him directly would turn her to stone. Jackson gestured broadly toward the table. "This company prides itself on being a bridge, a link connecting businesses and individuals, ensuring that everyone, regardless of who they are, feels valued and respected. It's a big part of what makes Apex Deliveries successful." There were a few murmurs of agreement, and Jackson allowed himself a small smile. He was setting the stage. "And yet," he continued, his tone sharpening, "sometimes things happen that threaten those values. Yesterday, for example, I personally witnessed an incident in this very office that was troubling." The murmurs stopped. All eyes shifted toward Lisa, who suddenly found the edge of the table very interesting. Jackson turned his gaze on her, and the room seemed to shrink. "Lisa," he said, his voice deceptively gentle, "would you care to explain what happened yesterday?" Lisa looked up, her expression somewhere between a deer in headlights and a student caught cheating on a test. Well, there was a misunderstanding," she began, her voice faltering. I thought I was acting in the best interests of the company." Jackson tilted his head slightly, a gesture that somehow felt like a spotlight. "Best interests?" he repeated, his tone almost curious. "Go on." Lisa glanced around the room, hoping for an ally, but the sea of blank faces offered no rescue. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I believed that certain symbols could create discomfort for other customers. I thought it was my responsibility to maintain a welcoming environment." "Interesting," Jackson said, leaning back against the table. "And how exactly did you decide that refusing service to someone based on a hat was the best way to achieve that?" Lisa's cheeks flushed. I didn't mean to offend anyone," she stammered. "I was just trying to uphold our values." Jackson raised an eyebrow, his expression one of faint disbelief. "Our values?" he echoed. "Because I'm pretty sure our values include treating every customer with respect, not humiliating them in front of a room full of people." The employees around the table shifted uncomfortably. Jackson wasn't just addressing Lisa now. He was making a point to everyone in the room. Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but Jackson held up a hand, silencing her. "Let me ask the room," he said, turning to the employees. "Who here was present yesterday and witnessed the incident in question?" A few hesitant hands went up. Jackson nodded, his gaze sweeping the room. "Excellent. Would anyone like to share their perspective?" The silence was deafening. One brave soul finally spoke up. It was uncomfortable to watch," they said, their voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think the situation was handled professionally." Jackson nodded again, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for your honesty," he said, before turning back to Lisa. "Lisa, let's make something very clear," he said, his voice dropping slightly. "This isn't about a hat, it's about judgment, your judgment. You took it upon yourself to decide who deserves our service based on your personal opinions. That's not leadership, that's bias." Lisa's face had gone from pink to scarlet. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "And if I hadn't been the customer in question?" Jackson continued, his tone now razor-sharp. Would your actions have been any less unacceptable? The question hung in the air like a guillotine. Lisa swallowed hard but said nothing. Jackson straightened, letting the silence stretch before finally breaking it. Here's what's going to happen, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. There will be mandatory customer service training for all staff, starting with you, Lisa. And if I hear about anything like this happening again, the consequences will be immediate and severe. Is that understood? Yes, sir, Lisa mumbled, barely audible. Good, Jackson said, his voice softening just slightly. Because this company doesn't succeed by pushing people away. We succeed by bringing them together. Let's not forget that. With that, he turned back to the room. Now, let's move on to how we're going to improve from here. The tension began to ease as Jackson transitioned into a discussion of new initiatives and policies, but Lisa remained silent, her earlier bravado completely extinguished. By the end of the meeting, Jackson had made his point loud and clear. Respect wasn't just a corporate buzzword. It was the foundation of everything Apex Deliveries stood for, and anyone who didn't understand that didn't belong. As the employees filed out, Jackson caught Lisa's eye and gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a chance to prove herself. Whether she'd take it was up to her. The conference room buzzed with quiet tension as employees filed in. Cynthia Walker, freshly humbled, clutched her clipboard like a life raft and sat at the far corner of the table, clearly trying to blend into the beige walls. The room was packed. Regional managers, department heads, and even a few investors were present. All eyes, however, were on Jackson Brooks. Dressed in his trademark sharp navy suit, Jackson stood at the head of the table, a commanding presence radiating calm authority. He tapped his pen lightly on the surface, waiting until every seat was filled and the room was silent. Good morning, everyone, Jackson began, his voice steady but carrying enough weight to silence even the quietest murmurs. We're here today because yesterday, I had the opportunity to experience how this branch interacts with our customers. And let me tell you, it was enlightening. A ripple of unease swept through the room. Cynthia visibly flinched, but kept her eyes down, praying to be overlooked. Jackson didn't name her directly, but his words cut sharply. Our company stands for respect, equality, and professionalism. It's the foundation of our success. When those values are ignored or dismissed, it's not just bad for business. It's bad for the people who rely on us. The tension in the room was palpable. Employees exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to nod in agreement or keep their heads down like Cynthia. Jackson paused, letting his words sink in before turning his attention directly to her. Cynthia, he said, his voice calm but firm. Yesterday, you made some choices. I'd like you to share with the team what those choices were and why you made them. Cynthia's head snapped up, her face pale. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The entire room waited, the air thick with expectation. Well, she stammered, clutching her clipboard tighter. I believed I was protecting the company's image by addressing what I thought was a potential issue. Jackson arched an eyebrow. A potential issue? You mean the hat I was wearing? Yes, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. And do you think kicking out a paying customer aligns with our company's values? Jackson asked, his tone sharp enough to make her wince. I didn't realize, she began, but Jackson held up a hand, cutting her off. You didn't realize I was the CEO, he finished for her. And that's the heart of the issue. Whether I'm the CEO or just an average customer, the way I was treated was unacceptable. Do you understand that? Yes, sir, Cynthia mumbled, her face a deep shade of crimson. Jackson leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. Good, because this isn't just about me. It's about the message you send to every employee here. If you think it's acceptable to let personal biases dictate how we treat our customers, you're in the wrong business. The room was silent except for the faint scratching of someone nervously tapping a pen. Cynthia squirmed in her seat, looking as if she wished the floor would swallow her whole. But, Jackson continued, his tone softening just slightly, I believe in second chances. That's why I'm not letting you go. Cynthia's head shot up, her eyes wide with surprise. Instead, Jackson said, straightening up, you'll be the first to enroll in a comprehensive customer service training program. And since you're clearly passionate about maintaining our company's values, you'll also be tasked with leading workshops for new hires on professionalism and respect. Her jaw dropped slightly, but she quickly nodded. Of course, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm not finished, Jackson added, his voice dropping a notch. This is your one and only chance to get it right. Fail to meet these expectations, and there will be no more conversations. Do I make myself clear? Crystal clear, sir, Cynthia said, her voice shaking. Good. Jackson turned to the rest of the room. This is a turning point for this branch. Starting today, we're implementing new standards to ensure every customer feels valued, no matter who they are or what they believe. This isn't just a policy, it's a commitment, and I expect every single one of you to uphold it. The room broke into a smattering of nods. The employees visibly relieved the storm was passing. 3 months later, the Apex branch was nearly unrecognizable. The dingy beige walls had been repainted a fresh, inviting blue, and the staff, once stiff and robotic, now greeted customers with genuine warmth. Cynthia Walker, who had once been the poster child for arrogance, had transformed into the office's go-to mentor. She took her training to heart, leading workshops with enthusiasm and earning the respect of her colleagues. Can you believe Cynthia? One employee whispered to another as they watched her guide a new hire through a tricky customer interaction. She's like a different person. Yeah, the other replied. It's weird, but in a good way. The branch's reputation soared, culminating in an award for Best Regional Performance at the annual company gala. Jackson Brooks himself attended the ceremony, handing the trophy to Cynthia in front of a cheering crowd. As the applause died down, Jackson leaned in and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "See what happens when you focus on respect instead of hats." The room erupted in laughter, and even Cynthia managed a sheepish smile. Later that evening, as Jackson prepared to leave, Cynthia approached him nervously. "Mr. Brooks," she began, "I just wanted to say thank you for giving me another chance. I don't think I deserved it." Jackson smiled. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Cynthia. It's what you do with it that counts." As he walked out of the building, he glanced back one last time, satisfied to see a branch that had turned its mistakes into successes. Because in the end, respect isn't just a policy, it's the foundation of greatness.